Sometimes, when we pushed our luck too far, my mother would watch over us in the back garden, the slipper tucked under her arm like a silent warning. The flower beds were sparse but weeded, a metal watering can nearby, and her eyes, sharp, unwavering, missed nothing. I can still see her, holding the slipper aloft, her face stern but not unkind, a ticking carriage clock and a framed school photo on the mantelpiece behind her. The Lancashire Evening Post lay folded nearby, a silent witness to the small dramas of our lives. These memories come flooding back when I read about Rachel Johnson's school days at Ashdown House, as described in her autobiography. It was an all-boys school, but her eccentric father persuaded the headmaster, Clive Williams, to take her and one other girl. Despite feeling homesick, she wrote, she had great fun. 2 girls in an all-boys school, what a spectacle that must have been. Her account is almost surreal, a story that could only unfold in Britain in the mid-70s. She tells of being caught with a boy, raiding a locked storeroom at midnight for sweets, a classic childhood caper. The punishment? A choice between a beating or missing out on a weekend visit home. Rachel, ever the rebel, chose the beating, which, depending on the offence, could be administered with the slipper, a cricket bat, or even a golf club. The headmaster, however, refused to beat a girl, and as a result, all corporal punishment at the school was stopped. By accident, she claims, she ended corporal punishment at Ashdown House. I've heard of cricket bats being used, but golf clubs. The implements of discipline in those days could be as creative as they were intimidating. Rachel Johnson has given at least 2 differing accounts of her Ashdown House experiences. I imagine the original story is still out there, somewhere on the web. I recall reading that she was slippered, perhaps during that infamous dorm raid, or maybe on another occasion. Later, she seemed to backtrack, perhaps uncomfortable with the attention her story attracted, or because Ashdown House became the subject of abuse stories and even a court case. The headmaster, Billy Williamson, was legendary, or notorious, depending on whom you asked. Other staff also used corporal punishment. It was simply part of life in a 1970s boarding prep school. For accuracy's sake, it's worth noting that Williamson was no longer headmaster when Rachel Johnson enrolled. His successor was, by all accounts, a kinder and saner man. In an article for The Spectator, Rachel confirmed it was the slipper, though she mentioned other, more senior punitive implements, a golf club and a Jacari bat rather than a cricket bat. Jacari bats, for those unfamiliar, are wooden bats, larger than table tennis paddles, usually attached to a ball by an elastic cord. Yet 7 years later in The Telegraph, Rachel's story shifted. Rather than the slipper, she claimed to have chosen the cane with glee. Who knows, perhaps she was contemplating contributing to a forum like this, or perhaps she simply wanted to rewrite her own history. Still, she acknowledged her earlier reference to the slipper. I don't wish to stir up controversy, but there's some dissimulation here, perhaps even at a high level. Rachel Johnson did receive corporal punishment at Ashdown House, and it wasn't abolished because of her. It continued after Williamson's retirement, spanning the years when Rachel, her older brother Boris, and her younger brother, also an MP, attended. The rules applied to girls as well as boys. Perhaps Rachel regrets her earlier revelations, but the past cannot be erased. The establishment, the government, and the party in power would likely prefer these stories to fade away. Yet when Ashdown House, under new ownership, finally closed, Rachel couldn't resist the temptation of a colourful 2-page spread in the Daily Mail. The evidence is there, buried in the documentation of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. If you have the time and the stomach, you can find the forensically detailed report by searching ICSA INQ 04624 report, Ashdown House. The report makes it clear the regime was systemically infected with incidents of sexual abuse, and the change of headmaster did little to alter that. The inquiry, however, doesn't focus much on corporal punishment, except for the appalling actions of Derek Slade. Corporal punishment was legal then, and routinely, if not abusively, used in many private schools. In that context, It's surprising that Rachel Johnson now seeks to distance herself. Some conflate corporal punishment with sexual abuse, but many of us, having experienced the former but not the latter, see them as distinct. Human memory is a fickle thing. Eyewitnesses, too, are unreliable. I've experienced this myself, looking at old photos that contradict memories I thought were unshakable. Rachel Johnson may have been mistaken in her first account, and perhaps she still doesn't have the story straight. We may never know the full truth, but what remains, what endures, are the lessons of childhood. The slipper on the armchair, the stern glance from a mother, the laughter and the tears, the stories we tell and retell, reshaping them with each passing year.